if you would. No, I always have everybody stand on the song before the lesson, so get your blood flowing so you don't fall asleep as easy. So let's just get a little blood going, and then you can be seated, whenever you got that going. All right, everybody ready? First, I'd like to, you can be seated. Unless you want to stand with me the whole time. Who picked out the scripture reading this morning? Melody did? Okay, real close to the text this morning. If we'd have just read a few more verses, our text is going to be James chapter 5 and verse 17, if you'd like to move over there. Has anyone ever experienced having a bad day? Yeah. If you haven't, I don't blame you. How about not just a bad day, but maybe a period in your life where you just feel a little down in the dumps and you don't feel very spiritual, maybe. You don't feel close to God. You're just a little down in the dumps. We all have those little mood swings in our life and stuff, don't we? Well, I was reading in James, and I'd like to talk about that this morning. Just a little bit of encouragement for those times when we maybe have a case of the blues. In James chapter 5, verse 17, we were real close. I think he went down to 12. So if you just keep reading on down, and we will read, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed fervently that it might not rain. And for 3 years and 6 months it did not rain on the earth. Then he prayed again, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth bore its fruit. But I want to stop at verse 17 there, when we're reading it, and it says, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. What in the world does that mean, James? I mean, this is a man who, he stuck his finger in Ahab's face and told him the way it was going to be. He literally carried the key to heaven's floodgates in his pocket for 3.5 years when it didn't rain. This is a guy who lifted the lifeless son of the widow who was feeding him and stuff, and when he had died, and brought him back to life. We can't forget the story of his victory over all the prophets on Mount Carmel, and all the prophets of Baal. Then, of course, when he went with Elisha and went to the Jordan, and a flaming horses came and separated him, and he was carried off to God. This man didn't even see death. This is a man who stood with Moses and Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. How in the world was he like us? How is Elijah like me? So I go and I reread Elijah's story. And I came to this passage in 1 Kings chapter 19 and verse 4. And we will read it. 1 Kings chapter 19 and verse 4. But he himself, talking about Elijah, went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree, broom tree, which is a juniper tree. And he asked that he might die, saying, It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. This guy was down in the dumps, wasn't he? He was just like me. He's having a bad day, a bad period in his life when he was in despair. So what was wrong with Elijah? He wasn't a natural pessimist, obviously, as some people are. Some people find pride in finding negative things about everything and seeing the glass half empty all the time. Some people are self-elected supervisors of the sewers and gutters, but that's not I don't believe that's what Elijah was. One woman once said, "I feel good today, but I always feel the worst when I feel the best, because I know how bad I'm going to feel when I get to feeling bad again." So just negative the whole way, right? 2 buckets went down into a well, and the first one cried, "Man, it breaks my heart to think that however full we go away, we always come back empty." The second bucket laughed and said, "I was just congratulating myself on the fact that no matter how empty we come to the well, we always go away full." One spring morning, 2 little girls ran into a garden where the sunlight was glistening on the dew, and God had just laid the miracle of 100 full-blown roses. They both looked at the scene and ran back to the house, where the first one said, "Mom, the roses are blooming, but there's a thorn for every rose." You know where this is going, don't you? The second girl said, "Mom, the roses are blooming, and there's a rose for every thorn." So, all depends on our outlook, huh? If we want to look at the positive or the negative. I don't believe that Elijah was a deliberate pessimist. He just had a case of the blues. An old saying goes, "He who steals my purse steals trash. But he who steals from me my sunny outlook, my expectation of the dawn of a tomorrow, takes that which not enriches him, but makes me poor indeed." So what was truly the matter with Elijah? Well, he was tired. He was utterly spent, wasn't he? Just think of the days preceding his victory on Mount Carmel against the prophets of Baal. And then he had, of course, the day of the contest and the victory. And then how many of us think of Elijah as an old man in our minds? Don't be shy. I always thought that. I always think he's an old man in a cloak, and like you see in the movies or something. He, after the defeat of the prophets, ran in front of Ahab's chariot from Carmel back to Jezreel, and that was a distance of 17 miles. I don't think it was an old man. This was a strong man. This was a strong, healthy man. Then, when he arrived there at Jezreel, what did he get? He got a message threatening his life. I'm sure he expected that the men who stood there after his victory on Carmel, who shouted, "The Lord, He is God," to stand behind him, but they didn't. I'm sure he expected that Jezebel would even be afraid to lift her voice in support or defiance of their old heathen ways, but he was mistaken. Instead, she sent him this word in chapter 19, verse 2. "So may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Do you remember what happened on Mount Carmel? They went, and all the prophets, they put up their altar and cut up their cow and put on there and prayed and danced around and everything. And then Elijah even made fun of them and said, "Well, maybe your God's sleeping, maybe he's in the bathroom taking a break." He was mocking him, making fun of him. And then Elijah did the same thing, had him pour 12 buckets of water on it, and even dug a trench around and soaked the whole thing, and it filled up the trench, prayed to God. God's fire came down, licked it all up, all of it, the water, the dust, the altar, the sacrifice. So everyone was standing there who was witness to this, and they said, "The Lord, He is God." I'm sure Elijah expected them to stand up for him because they had just witnessed all this happen. So this upset him. He felt like he hadn't won at all. He gave way to fear, and cowardice now drove him without rest into the wilderness. And the end of this road was naturally the juniper tree. So one source of his discouragement was that he was utterly tired. It's hard to be hopeful when our nerves are on edge. As a tired body yields itself more readily to physical disease and sickness, so does our spirit yield more readily to discouragement and depression. The second reason, I believe, for his collapse was a lost sense of the divine fellowship. Up until now, every step had been ordered of the Lord. He had a sense of the divine presence that was continuous. But Jezebel's threat had made him believe that he had to look out for himself. So he took matters into his own hands. And anytime we take matters into our own hands, this is definitely the road that leads to the juniper tree. I believe such a collapse is next to impossible if we keep on intimate terms with God. Over here in the New Testament, we have a man named Paul. He's on a ship that is going to pieces. The sailors' faces are white with fear and panic, and the only thing louder than their hollow screams is the popping timbers of the wrecking ship. But this man steadies himself and shouts, "Be of good cheer." Okay, be of good cheer. This is in Acts 27 and verse 22. What was the secret of Paul's cheer? Well, that's in verse 23. He says, "There stood by me this night the angel of God, whose I am." None of that mattered to Paul, what was going on with the ship. He was saved by an intimate and personal sense of the divine presence of God. Elijah temporarily, I believe, had lost this. That's why discouragement and a case of the blues had set in. The worst naturally followed. Hope failed. He thought of personal failure. He complained in verse 4 of chapter 19, "I'm no better than my fathers. You know, they had allowed idolatry. I haven't been able to bring them back. I have accomplished nothing." Have you ever had that feeling that you were of no account? That we haven't done what we could, or that what we've done just didn't add up to anything? Few things can bring more heartache and discouragement than believing that you're a failure. It makes you just want to give up. You work, no one appreciates it. You toil faithfully, no one compliments you. You guys hear that from me every once in a while, huh? I'm going to read you a little story from a guy named Frank Borum. He was a student of Charles Spurgeon, and he wrote like 70 or 80 books, and he wrote some essays. But he wrote this little thing about an onion, and I'd like to read it to you. So this is directly from him, his book. He says, "I read the other day a fascinating essay. In this essay, the author spoke of a certain discouraged friend of his. He declared it his purpose to help this friend by sending him a present. And the strange present that he was going to send him was an onion. Yes, he was going to wrap this onion in lovely tissue paper, put it in a beautiful candy box, and tie it with a pink ribbon and post it to his friend at once. Now, why send him an onion? Well, for the simple reason that though an onion is one of the most valuable of all vegetables, though it is the finest of relishes, and though it has added flavor to 1,000 feasts, yet nobody praises the onion." Of course, you know, the author is right here. You may have read some great poetry in your time, poetry on daffodils, violets, roses, daisies. Even you have known a great poet who could write about a louse or a field mouse. But where do you find a poem about an onion? What orator waxes eloquent in its praise? What bride ever carries a bouquet of onions as a bridal bouquet? This is true, of course, but why is it true? It's not because the onion is useless. The real reason is because it is so strong. It is hard to grow sentimental over great, strong things, though many tears have been shed over onions. So that is the story of the onion. Sometimes we praise. I have people at work, some of my guys, that I have to praise more than others and encourage because they need it. We see that in our lives, don't we? We all have people that we need to encourage more and praise more because they need it, because they're weak. Then there are others who are strong, and we don't praise as much because we know they're strong and we expect great things from them. So just because someone is not praising you, don't let that make you think that you are of no account or that you are useless. Now, not only did Elijah lose his faith in himself, but he lost faith in others as well. He thought there was no good man in Israel. And if you want a shortcut to the blues, get to a point where you don't believe in anybody. And sometimes I get that way. But because I'm a Christian and I can come see good people of the same faith, I know they're still good people. But if I look just at the world, boy, it's hard to keep that faith, isn't it? Some cultivate this attitude as if it's an asset, but I believe it's the worst liability. I believe it's literally a hell on earth if you go through your life thinking of every selfless act someone does that they have an ulterior motive, or that all men are liars. If you don't believe in people, no wonder you're miserable. If you don't believe that a fluctuating Simon Peter could end up being a rock, if you don't believe Mary Magdalene could end up a herald of resurrection, or that the world is salvable, well, no wonder we're down in the dumps. If we don't believe that a Saul of Tarsus, one who was killing Christians and really good at it, could become, instead of the persecutor, the persecuted. We must believe in honesty, goodness, and purity of at least a few. There are bad, vicious, and godless men, but all are not so, and don't believe that they are. I found this poem. It says, "There are loyal hearts, there are spirits brave, there are souls that are good and true. Then give the world the best you have, and the best will come back to you. Give love, and love to your heart will flow, and strength for your utmost need. Give faith, and a score of hearts will show their faith in your worldly deed. Give truth, and truth will be paid in kind, and honor will honor meet, and a smile that is sweet is sure to find a smile that is just as sweet. For life is the mirror of king and slave. It's just what we are and do. Then give the world the best you have, and the best will come back to you." We all know what an echo is, right? We as kids, I think it's fun at work in our big units there that we build. At certain points, when we'll have a platform in the middle of it, you can stand right dead center of it, and when you speak, it echoes all the way around you. So we all think that that's kind of fun to do. But we've all played with echoes as a child, huh? When you say something and it comes back, and well, life is a big echo. It speaks to us in the tone of our own voice. It gives us the faith or the unbelief that we give ourselves. With faith gone in himself, back to Elijah, and in man, he requested that he would die. He prayed that he would die. Do you believe he meant it? Personally, I don't believe he meant it, because Jezebel would have gladly obliged him that. He didn't have to pray for death. He could have just stayed in Jezreel and not hid, and Jezebel would have had him slain. So I think he was just down in the dumps, and he's not saying what he really believes when he's at his best. So how did God cure Elijah's case of the blues? Rest. Rest. When we're overworked, sometimes we need to just rest. God rested after his work, 6 days of creation. He rested. He laid out the example for us. Some people need rest from idleness. They get down in the dumps and get blue because they've got nothing to do. Some people need rest from idleness. God showed God showed Elijah his sin. In 1 Kings 19 and verse 9, he asked Elijah, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Now there's an emphasis I'm putting on doing. What are you doing here? And Elijah, I think, must have blushed. And he's like, well, I'm whining, I'm complaining, I'm keeping tabs on to see if I'm a success or a failure. And right now I feel like a failure. And I believe what the Lord wanted Elijah to learn is just what he wants us to learn from this today. Our job is not to keep tabs on if we're a success or failure. Our job is not bookkeeping. We aren't even always competent to tell the difference if we're a success or a failure. The world's greatest failure, man's greatest failure, I believe, was Calvary, right? But that darkest night was the mother of the brightest day. Do not waste time keeping books. That road leads one place, the juniper tree. When the Lord was, I can't read my own writing. What the Lord was saying was, it's not your business. He's talking to Elijah. It's not your business, Elijah, to do this math and add up if you're a success. You did all this math and thought about it, and you got 0. But I added it up, and I got 7,000. He said, 7,000 have not bowed a knee to Baal. That's in verse 18 of chapter 19. Elijah, you have been a help. You have been an inspiration. You are not a failure because you have walked with me. God doesn't fail, and the man that walks with God will not fail. If we live in the divine presence of the Lord, our lives can never be a failure. So, God's call to Elijah and to you and to me is to leave off the heartbreaking task of bookkeeping, keeping tabs. We need to put our hands in his and just resume the journey. The story is told, you've probably heard it, of the man who did a gospel meeting, and the whole time he only had one person come forward, a little teenage girl. So he thought the whole thing was a failure. And he went away and thought, man, I had worked so hard, to put all that together and present those great lessons, and only one convert. Before he died, he found that girl had gotten married and had 7 boys, and every one of them became a gospel preacher. So was he a failure? Was his gospel meeting a failure? He thought so, but it wasn't. Again, a story of a woman whose all she wanted to do was be a missionary in India. And so as she was preparing for that, about to go, her mom fell ill, and so she had to stay and take care of her. And then a couple of years later, her mom passed, and so she started readying herself again to go to India. Well, about the time to go, her sister-in-law fell ill, and so she needed to go take care of her kids because she had 3 little girls. So she went and took care of them, and then she passed. So she was stuck with these girls that she had to raise, these 3 girls. So she resigned herself that she'd never get to go to India and be a missionary. And so she kind of thought she was a failure. But then when the little girls grew up, one by one, they each became a missionary and went to India. So was she a failure? Just because she couldn't realize her dream, just because she couldn't do it in her way, in her terms, she walked with God, and God gave the increase. It's not our job. It's not our job to do the bookkeeping and to keep score and to end up feeling like we're a success or a failure. And so when Elijah realized this, he, of course, came out of his blues. And as we go along our way, we will in some way shake off our discouragement, our cloud of the blues, and we'll find ourselves again in the divine presence of God, and we will feel good once again if we just follow him and keep in his presence. We will come to know for ourselves what the prophet Isaiah penned in chapter 26 and verse 3. He says, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." You want to defeat discouragement and depression? Keep your mind fixed on God. Keep your dwell. What was the word that was used this morning? To dwell. I said to dwell in his word. It is to abide. Yes, abide in his word. To dwell in it, to live in it, to have our lives immersed in his word so that we know his will for us. So the lesson is yours. I hope you can take a little bit of encouragement from a man such as Elijah, who, even though he was we see all the great things that he did, he was also a man, as James says, with a nature like ours. He too could get down in the dumps. So I hope that it's encouraging, and if there's anybody who is discouraged or down in the dumps and you need the prayers of the congregation, now's a great time to have that done. And if you're not a Christian, then now's the perfect time to take care of that problem. So if there's any needs at all, just come forward as we stand and sing.